All right, let's talk about a word you hear all the time, especially at work: implement. You see it in emails, you hear it in meetings, but what does it really mean when we say it? Today, we're going to unpack this word and get to the simple but super powerful idea right at its heart. So, let me ask you straight up. If someone asked you to define implement right now, what would you say? Could you get past just saying it means to do something? It's one of those words that sounds super professional, but its true meaning is kind of tucked away. So why is it the word of choice in business, in tech, even in law? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out. Okay, so the secret to really truly getting this word, it all boils down to one single powerful image. This is the key that unlocks everything about it. And that idea is to fill and complete. I know it sounds almost too simple, but trust me, once you see it this way, you'll never look at the word implement the same way again. And there you have it. This is the big idea, the core image. Every single time you see the word implement, whether it's used as an action or as a thing, it all comes back to this one picture. You're taking something that's kind of empty or incomplete, and you're filling it up with whatever it needs to be whole. And you can actually see how this idea grew over time, which is pretty cool. It all kicks off in Latin. You've got in, which means inside, and plere, which means to fill. Put them together, and you get implere, literally to fill up. From that, we got implementum, which could mean either the act of filling something or the thing you use to do the filling, like a tool. And boom, that leads us straight to the two ways we use the word today. So let's really nail this down. Seriously, if you only remember one thing from our chat today, let it be this. The core image of implement is just the act of filling something with what it needs to be complete. A perfect way to think about it is like this. A plan is just an empty box. When you implement that plan, you're filling that box with actions to make it real. And get this, that Latin root, plere, is like a secret ingredient in a bunch of other English words. Think about complete. What is that? It's to fully fill something. Or supply. That's to fill something up, usually from below. Even plenty just means the state of being filled. So implement isn't alone. It's part of this whole family of words that are all about filling things up. All right, so now that we've got that solid foundation, let's look at how this one little root branches out into the two main ways we use implement today: as a verb, an action word, and as a noun, a thing. Okay, first up, the verb. When you implement a plan, what you're really doing is filling that plan with actual actions to bring it to life. See how that's got a bit more weight to it than just doing something? Then you've got the noun. An implement is just an object that fills a specific need. It's a bit more formal than the word tool, and we usually use it for a whole set of things for a particular job. Here's a classic example you'd see in the news. A new policy is just words on paper, right? It's an empty shell. To implement it means doing all the stuff that makes it real. Setting up the programs, launching the websites, training the staff. All the actions that fill that empty policy and turn it into something that actually works. And you hear this all the time in tech. A project manager gives a developer a list of new security features. That list is just a bunch of requirements. The developer's job is to implement those features, which means they write all the code that fills those requirements and makes them a real working part of the app. And when we use it as a noun, notice how it's almost always for a set of tools. Like you probably wouldn't call a single screwdriver an implement, but a whole collection of tools for farming. Yeah, those are agricultural implements. A drawer full of special utensils for cooking. Those are kitchen implements. See? Each set is there to fill all the different needs for one big task. Okay, so now we get what implement is all about. But when should you actually use it? Like, why say implement instead of execute or carry out? Let's break down those little differences so you can sound extra sharp and pick the perfect word. So let's just run through these real quick. Implement. That's your most formal option. It's perfect for a big, detailed plan or strategy. Execute is pretty close, but it feels more like you're following a direct order and seeing it through to the end. Carry out is way more casual. It's the one you'd use in everyday conversation. Enforce is different. That's all about making people follow a rule or a law. And of course, tool is just a super general word, while an implement is much more specific. So, the bottom line? You save implement for when you're talking about making a formal, structured plan a reality. All right, time to get practical. How can you actually start using this in your own sentences? Here are the most common ways you'll see it. You're almost always going to see the verb implement paired up with one of these words. You implement a plan.
You implement a strategy, a policy, a system. You see the pattern here? All of these are big, structured ideas that need to be filled with action. It's why you wouldn't say you implement a sandwich, right? But you would absolutely say you implement a new software system.
So you see, it all comes back to that one single idea we started with. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the verb or the noun, a huge business strategy, or a simple garden tool. The core picture is always the same. To implement is to fill and complete. So, I'll leave you with this thought. The next time you're working on a plan or a new strategy, don't just see it as a checklist. Think of it as an empty container. And ask yourself, what am I going to use to fill this thing up and make it complete? What actions, what people, what resources will it take? In other words, how are you really going to implement it?